In 2008, every project in my small structural engineering practice disappeared due to the mortgage crisis. Within the following weeks, our family suffered a terrible tragedy, and I was left a solo mom with 2 young boys. Over the months that followed, I felt the same fear that so many others were experiencing. How will I pay my mortgage and my utility bills? My overwhelming thoughts were, how do I keep my kids safe? How can I make sure that they will always have a safe and comfortable home, no matter what the economy is doing? I had a choice to make. I could stay in the fear, or I could make some dramatic changes. So we put our house on the feeble housing market, hoping to squeeze enough equity out of the sale to build a small, self-sustaining, off-grid home. The kids and I, together with a talented carpenter, his wife, and some helpers, built Twisted Oak, a home that heats and cools itself with the sun, collects our water, heats that water with the sun, and generates all of the power we need with a small solar array. By recycling our gray water, we enjoy an indoor jungle in a semi-arid climate. And by incorporating a composting toilet, we can responsibly recycle our waste back to the earth. By designing this home ourselves and putting our labor and elbow grease into it, we eliminated a mortgage and our monthly utility bills. Twisted Oak gave us a new lease on life. Building it with our hands nourished us as we began our healing process. We created a new life that rewarded me with the freedom of spending time with my kids while they were young, instead of working at a stressful job with a stressful commute. The unexpected results were discovering how living more connected to the cycles of nature creates immeasurable abundance, while lessening our impact on the planet. Just a few years before we built Twisted Oak, I couldn't even imagine the life that we have now. I was working in Seattle as a structural engineer, and I was married. I had a husband, 2 kids, a mortgage, and a bunch of utility bills. And I was working in the structural engineering world where I was providing engineering for new homes that were under construction. And I would often go to these construction sites and I would see these stick-built homes and enormous amount of waste going into huge dumpsters. And I just became aware that we need to really think about how we're building our homes. I really believed that there had to be a better way, especially when I realized that so many of the materials that were used in these homes are toxic. They're unhealthy for us, they're unhealthy for the planet. So I set out to study, and I began studying everything I could find. I took workshops on passive solar design. I started reading books about natural building. I studied permaculture and organic gardening, and I really became passionate about finding new ways in order to build homes that were healthy for us and healthy for the planet. So the day that my son came to me and he said, "Mom, I think we should move." And I asked him, I said, "Well, where would you move?" And he said, "Somewhere sunny." So in that moment, everything really changed. And I realized that we had a great opportunity. We had an opportunity to take everything that I had been studying for so many years and design and build a house for us. A house that would really demonstrate to others that a family really can live self-sustaining, live an abundant life with all their needs taken care of and the modern conveniences that they needed, and still leave a low impact on the planet and do it affordably. We packed our bags and we moved to Durango, Colorado, which was my hometown, to build the home that we live in now, and we named Twisted Oak. Now, I was an engineer and I knew how to design and draft up drawings for a house, and I had done so much research that I knew what I wanted to incorporate into the house. But I was not a carpenter. I'm not an electrician. I'm not a plumber. And I knew that I was going to need some help. Even though I really wanted to participate in the labor and be on the job site every day working, I knew I wasn't qualified to really build the house from scratch with my 2 kids. So I was so lucky to find this amazing carpenter. His name was Mike, and I ended up hiring his wife as well. And the three of us together with the two kids packed over 700 tires to create the back wall for our home. And then Mike and I continued to work through the entire project, kind of as co-conspirators in this project, where I would do the research and basically a lot of grunt labor, and he brought his skills as a carpenter and as a builder to the table, and we really co-created this house together. And we had to hire extra people when we needed it, but for the most part, I participated in and gave as much labor as I possibly could to the project, as well as the kids. They were on site almost every day. So I built out of tires for several reasons. Probably the most important reason was the site that we were building on is sloped, and that lent it perfectly to be what I call a bermed house, meaning that part of the house is buried and there's earth behind the back side of the house. So there's only a couple kinds of materials that you can use in order to create a bermed home, and one of those is tires. And tires are basically free, and you don't have to use concrete. Now, concrete's very expensive and not necessarily considered a very green material. So I saved a lot of money. I was able to build with these sweeping curves that you can with tires instead of just a straight wall like a typical concrete basement wall might be. I incorporated passive solar design into the house, and I would have incorporated passive solar into any type of house that I was building. We did that by putting most of the windows on the south side. Now, I didn't put so many windows that the house would overheat, but I actually used far fewer windows than you often see in a lot of passive solar houses. And this keeps the house really cool in the summer, and it doesn't overheat in the winter. I also incorporated materials that store and regulate heat. So those are dense materials, like I incorporated a concrete floor, adobe blocks around the bathing room, and then of course that thick, sturdy tire wall that makes up the entire back side of the house. These dense materials help regulate the temperature and the heat in the house. It keeps it from overheating, and it keeps it nice and warm in the winter. We also built with as many recycled materials as we could. So we used tires, we used bottles. I found this amazing set of kitchen cabinets at a garage sale. And we also found a really stunning door that I could have never afforded if I'd had to buy it, but it was at a garage sale. It was slightly warped, but it worked perfect for the door going into the systems room. We also incorporated water catchment into our house. That means that we collect all the water in the snow that lands on our roof, and that runs into a couple of cisterns. Now, the water is stored in the cisterns until we need it, and then we run it through a filtering system. And then there's additional filtering at the sinks where we brush our teeth, and we use the water for drinking and for cooking. Now, in Colorado, there's some pretty stringent laws about water catchment, but we were lucky enough that all the pieces fell together and we actually qualified for legal water catchment for our home. One of my favorite features of our home is our Greywater planter. All the water from our sinks and showers and tub and washing machine run into a huge planter that runs across the living room. Now, this planter is full of this gray water, which is perfect for growing plants. So we have beautiful blossoms and flowering plants year-round inside the living room. It's like having a jungle, and this is really a luxury because we live in a very arid climate, and so having a jungle indoors is quite nice. And by having a gray water system and a composting toilet, eliminated the need for a really expensive septic system. So many people think that living off the grid means living in lack and living disconnected from the rest of society, and I've just found that not to be true. I find that living with more of an awareness to our natural resources, being more connected to nature, being connected to the water that we collect, being connected to the power that we generate, and living very abundantly within those cycles and with what's very abundant in nature has led to a much more fulfilling and much more conscious lifestyle. I really wanted my kids to not be taken away from modern life and to not be able to function, but I wanted them to also live in a world where they were conscious. That when they turned on the water faucet, they realized that that water was caught on the roof and stored in tanks. And that when it's really dry and it hasn't rained for a while, we have to watch our water consumption a little bit. And when it's raining and there's lots of snow, we can take long showers and big bubble baths. And that's an awareness that most people don't have in this society anymore. You know, we turn on a water faucet and we just expect there to be fresh, clean water. I wanted my kids to be raised in a lifestyle in which they were much more aware of the resources that they're using. Now that doesn't mean that we don't have all the nice features that most homes do. We have a flat screen TV, they played video games, we all have smartphones, and they needed computers for school, so we have computers, and I run an online business from a computer from an off-grid home. So we really have all the features that we need, and we have all the power and resources that we need to be very comfortable. So when you come into our home, the first thing you enter into is what we call the entry room, which is kind of an airlock. So you come through the outside door and you close it, and there's a place to take off your coat and take off your shoes. And then there's another door that's a glass door, and you open that door and that leads you into the living space. Now, having these two doors set up this way allows us to maintain a better temperature in the home. So the millions of times that the dogs go in and out, we don't have to lose the heat in the winter or the nice cool air in the summer every time we let the dogs in and out. When you come into the main part of the house, I designed that as a great room. And so we have a big open space, which is great for passive solar. We have windows running along the south side of the house, but not too many to overheat the house. And the sun floods in the winter and comes deep into the house and across the concrete floor. And the concrete floor absorbs all that wonderful winter sunlight, and all of the tires and all of the adobe and the natural plasters all absorb all of this heat in the winter, and that helps keep the house nice and warm. In the summer, there's an eave over those windows so that the summer sun doesn't even come directly into the house, and that's one way that we keep the house cool. All these tires and all of this dense material also helps keep the house cool in the summer by regulating that temperature. Now, the kitchen in the house has a huge table, and that is really the heart of the home. We spent so much time when the kids were younger doing school at this table and eating and cooking, and this is really the heart of the home, and so I wanted to make it a special place. And even to this day, now that the kids are grown and off to college, this is still the center point of our home. Now, the bathing room, as we call it, is the home to our clawfoot tub. And this room is surrounded by adobe blocks. And this is even more of that material I've talked about, where the sun comes in and is absorbed into that material and then is released in the evening or as the temperature starts to drop. So our bathing room, even though it doesn't have any kind of mechanical heating system, is always a warm and wonderful place to take a bath. Now, we named the other part of this room the throne room, because originally we had a very large and cumbersome composting toilet, which we have luckily replaced with a much simpler toilet. It's much easier to take care of, and it separates the liquids from the solids. So we call that the throne room, and it is separated from the bathing room. Since we only have one bathroom, it makes sense to separate those two rooms so you can do your business in one room and not be disturbed by someone else in the other room. Next are the kids' bedrooms, which is now in my office. So now that the kids are gone, we created a space so that it could transform as life changed, because life never stays the same. The other room at the end of the house is the most private of all the rooms, and that is what I labeled the ladies' chamber, and that's my bedroom. And then now that I have a partner, we share that bedroom. And the one thing I really wanted to do in this house was to create lots of usable storage. So we have 2 full-size closets in that room, and it's at the end of the house, so there's a little bit more privacy. If somebody's watching TV, it's a nice quiet place to go play music or to meditate or to just be away from the rest of the house. One of my favorite places is a little piece of heaven that I carved out at the end of the house that's next to my bedroom. And very early on, we all named it the Mommy Patio, invitation only. And this was a space that I could go and just have some peace and quiet. As a single mom, it was really important for me to have kind of my own special space. But what ended up happening is I always wanted the kids with me anyway. So we spent a lot of time out there. Even during construction, I created this space as my little haven, and I decorated it with flowers and had just a place where it seemed like there was at least a little piece of civilization during all of the construction. Now, I've been living off-grid for many years now, and it just feels like the most natural way of life. I can't imagine living any other way. I really believe that anyone who puts their mind to it can build a sustainable home too. And you don't have to build off the grid to reduce your impact on the planet and your wallet. You can build the same kind of home on the grid and drastically reduce your mortgage and utility bills. I'm Christina Monroe. Scroll down and leave me a comment. Tell me what kind of lifestyle and home you're dreaming about. And if you'd like to know more about self-sustaining homes, living debt-free, and how you could design and build one too, then make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel by clicking the subscribe button down below. Check out the link to our website where you'll find out more about our workshops, online courses, and my book with the complete story about how we designed and built our self-sustaining off-grid home. I post a video every Saturday morning, so stay tuned for more videos on designing, planning, and building your off-grid home.